Hi, I'm Paul Bowman, CEO at Wexer, the digital fitness specialist who deliver over 25 million fitness experiences for our partners worldwide. Welcome to the Wexer podcast, where I'll be speaking to industry experts to bring you insights and advice to support your business journeys. In today's episode, I'll be chatting with my good friend, Sean Tan, CEO of RX Health and Director of APAC Health and Fitness Association. Sean, welcome to the Wexer podcast. How are you?
Thank you very much, mate. Very good to be on the podcast, and to everybody watching or listening in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be.
Nice. Well, look, I think so many people know you, but I think it's always nice to hear. And one of the things that we hear a lot from listeners is it's nice to hear everyone's background in terms of how they get in there. So I'm actually going to go straight away into: did fitness find you, or did you find fitness?
I think I sort of found fitness from a very young age. Competitive athlete, multiple sports, but I'm that sort of guy who never really likes to sit down and, Singapore, for example, has a conscript army. You get enlisted when you're 18 years old, but before going in,
Yes.
I was a guy who was training to get into the army and not the other way around. So yeah, absolutely fitness. I was finding fitness before it found me.
And your background, though, you've got a legal background before hitting fitness. Is that right?
Yeah, I qualified as a lawyer and I practiced as a commercial litigator and a restructuring lawyer for the best of 12 years. And after that, I stepped out to do a variety of other things, including private equity in China. I ran a coal mining company. I ran my own football or soccer consultancy, brought Real Madrid on tour to China pre-season. Did practically everything that you can imagine, but always having a foot in legal. So I still
Yes.
consult
Okay.
once in a while for some companies on legal matters, but I also always had a foot in fitness and sport. So I've had
Right.
various businesses involving sport, football academies, gyms, and the whatnot before finding myself full time in fitness at the end of 2017.
Well, I have to admit to listeners that before the podcast, when you were rattling off everything you've done, I'm like, okay, Sean, I think I might just let you intro yourself. You've done a lot in your industry, and you're being very humble with it. So, but let's dive into one of the most recent things that you're doing. Of course, you're helping the Health and Fitness Association in the APAC region, which I commend you doing. I think it's a great appointment by them, and I think you're the right person for the APAC region. But can you share us a little bit of details in terms of what the role entails?
Sure. Well, most of you are familiar with the Health and Fitness Association with its other name, the former name, IRSA.
True.
And IRSA's been around since 1981. And they are, the largest global trade body for the industry. And about 2 years ago, they decided that they wanted to do a rebrand to focus on, I think, what the new direction was, which is to unite the fitness industry globally. And I think they saw themselves as being a leader already. And how could they then better do that job of uniting the industry internationally, globally? So that all started with a rebrand, and they have now called themselves Health and Fitness Association. So it'll take a little bit of time before everybody sort of gets used to the name. But they've also been very clear in their strategy moving forward. And they've said, hey, we want to have 3 pillars. So the 3 main pillars now are advocacy, education, and research. And when they approached me for the role, they said they needed a helping hand in the APAC region. The post had remained vacant since the late, John Holsinger passed, and they felt a need. There were federations and operators within APAC that had been coming to HFA and saying, hey, we need somebody in our time zone because we love the things that HFA is doing. We want to continue to be working with the HFA, but it would be so much more convenient if we've got somebody in the same time zone. So they approached me. I couldn't, unfortunately, give all of my time to them because I've got other business interests. But I told them, I will give them X number of days a month, and I'll be fully dedicated during those number of days to trying to see forth their mission. And their mission in APAC is very simple: share what they've been doing with the rest of the world. Much of the success has been by working through federations and with main club operators in the region, pushing down some of the research, the incredible research that HFA has been doing, push more of that down, stuff that is relevant to the APAC region, to make that more accessible and available to all the operators and to the federations, so that everybody can realize that, hey, today the industry is very much a global one. It's very united. We basically operate in what I would say is almost like a borderless industry. You've got franchise operators which are running all over from Australia all the way to the US and vice versa. So I think the world will benefit with more collaboration and just being able to work together a lot closer.
And we've had Liz on the podcast, and I think she's done an amazing job, especially with getting key people like yourselves to take on the mission. But like it's been interesting ever since I've moved from London to Auckland, just the nuances of the APAC region. Like we were talking, but above, like I just came back from a lot of travels within Europe and the US, and it felt within the boardrooms that labor cost is the biggest issue. I think there's probably a bit of a challenge statement that maybe 50% of labor costs, we have to see a reduction of 50% to be able to make a lot of the models that we have in traditional fitness sustainable. But you actually mentioned it's more of a supply issue in APAC. Do you want to just give the reasons behind that?
It is. It's not so much labor costs at the moment. I mean, I think labor costs, even at the top end of the market for the fitness industry, is still bearable. I think the businesses can take it. But what we're finding is you don't have enough supply coming into the market, and because there are more and more operators which are coming in at the moment, we're all fighting for that same pie. The one thing that may surprise people is that quite a lot of countries in the APAC region actually have a shrinking birth rate. You have what is called a silver tsunami, which is coming. And it may surprise some to find out that Thailand, for example, where a lot of people associate with having a very young population, actually doesn't have enough young people coming in, to replace the elderly. And what that translates into is a shrinking workforce that's coming in. It surprised me because a couple of years ago I was in Bangkok, and I was speaking to friends in the food and beverage industry, and they were lamenting how they could hardly find people to work in the food and beverage industry. And I was like, my goodness, if Thailand's having that problem, what about the rest of us? So yes, we face that market, but that's also why one of the things I am doing. I'm launching actually within the next month or two an academy for fitness education. It's called the Singapore Academy for Fitness and Exercise, because we see a shortage.
I feel that's a bit of an exclusive you just dropped just there, Sean. That's a bit of an exclusive. I didn't know about that. Okay, good to know. Sorry, carry on.
It's not been announced.
Okay.
That all the handles are out on all the social media platforms already. But not yet. But one of the reasons why we're doing that is because we feel that one of the missing pieces to the labor shortage is education, number one, but also helping to chart a clear career pathway for everybody in the industry. So we're trying to play our part by doing that. There'll be more pieces of information coming out about that new academy we're launching. But watch that space.
And just a question before I get into, want to understand what you think the challenges are. But like one of the big things I notice, again, talking Europe and US, is just how much the young people are driving a lot more demand in terms of more high end. So they're not on the traditional wages that you would see in some of these high end clubs, but they'll dictate their wage. A large percentage of their wages to their fitness orientation, because they're just not going out anymore. Like saw a lot of the old. Don't want to go into too many stories from, but a lot of the old places that maybe I went a few times in the UK, the few nightclubs all shut down, and I'm like, where is that coming from? And it feels like they're more interested in doing a morning rave in a fitness orientation rather than actually going out and doing maybe what we did, which probably wasn't good for us. But, it's just amazing how much that is shifting the needle in regards to just consumer behavior in terms of how they see wellness is such an important part. I think COVID drove that, especially for the young people. But it's just, I think it's a great trend to see how much they are portioning their wages to good fitness experiences. Are you seeing the same in APAC?
We are seeing the same, albeit at a slower pace. APAC, Asia, has always sort of taken cue from what's happening in the West.
Sure.
And the one unique thing about the APAC region that people should take note of, and, it's not just one country. When you talk about APAC or you talk about Asia, it's many countries, many languages, many cultures. Yep. That's the first big difference. But the other thing is, you have fitness and wellness at its infancy in many of these smaller countries or less developed countries. And the interesting thing is, unlike the development in the West or in more developed cities in APAC like Singapore or Hong Kong, Australia, and New Zealand, where you've sort of seen the rise of fitness in the traditional way. So you came in with sort of big box and, you follow those trends, right? But now what we're seeing in some of the APAC countries, the smaller ones, the less developed ones, is you're seeing boutiques being parachuted in. So they don't have that growth trajectory, sort of like following that of Singapore. You sometimes miss the big box piece and you only have boutiques which start off, and it's quite sophisticated boutique type workouts, or they might come in via the franchise route. So franchises like BFT or F45 have led the way, or you've got
they've actually leapfrogged. So a lot of the developed countries they haven't done big boxes whatsoever. That's interesting.
Yes, and that also means that you have the young people or the younger people who are into these trends, which then drive the development of the market in those countries. So it's interesting to see how that goes.
It'll be interesting from a overall global case study, right? Because like a lot of and you've been in a lot of these roundtables. One of the roundtables I was in is a lot of them look at these boutique trends and look, once there's a sort of mass adoption, that's when they're adopted in their big box club, and they do affect the overall consumption of that. Like I've seen, especially not to pick on F45 here, but a lot of the big operators, when they switched to doing some more functional fitness stuff, they actually took out a lot of the F45s around that region, because of course they can have all they have the weights room, they have showers, they have wellness areas, they have so much other stuff, and you get an F45 like workout, so they're for probably the same price as F45. So like not having big boxes to have that dynamic is going to be interesting to actually watch and see how that plays out in the next 5 years.
It is. You're absolutely right. In some countries, we've seen boutiques lead the opening of the market. And then after that, you've got the opening of mid boxes. Whether it'll go the way of big boxes after that, I don't know. But it's just an interesting development. And all that's happening because of the proliferation of social media. People are seeing what other people in other countries are doing. That's saying, man, that's cool. We want to do that, without actually, doing anything else before. But that's really interesting.
Yeah, and is there any reason, like, is there any leasing or real estate issues to why they aren't able to find the big boxes, or it's just not the demand? They don't feel that the demand's there. The new entrepreneur is actually more worried about the boutiques than they are creating a big box or the capital outlay.
I think you don't. I think they haven't really done a deep study of the demand, actually, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
I do think that there is space for big boxes to go in, or the strength gyms to go in a bigger way. It's not so much the real estate. Yes, if you're looking at the city centers in some of these cities, they might not have the space at the moment, but space in general is not a big problem, except for cities like Singapore and Hong Kong, which have already seen that big box trend.
Yeah. Do you think that it's not a criticism? Just is it a reality? Is that we, like, especially the Westerners, do we think we look at Singapore, probably Australia, New Zealand, like the more mature markets that have followed us, rather than actually the Thailands? And I remember talking to Fitness First about this a lot with Simon Flint. Is that actually you can't base a business model off how things happen in Singapore for Asia. You would just be squashed. You have to actually be so localized in there to particular markets because there's so many different ways of working, different cultural patterns. Is that fair? Is that not? We're making too many assumptions, probably sometimes looking at it from a European and a US point of view. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think places like Singapore and Hong Kong, which are both what I call Asia light, make Asia an interesting destination for
Yes.
investors or club operators from the West who want to come in, and that's a good thing, But I think just everybody has to be cognizant that Singapore and Hong Kong alone are not a true representative of what the rest of Asia is, and that localization, as you rightly put it, is very, very important to be successful on a sustained basis. But I think places like Singapore and Hong Kong are very good footholds, for you to get sort of like a leg into Asia and then to understand it better. Part of the key is actually trying to look for good local partners, and there are plenty around, that have local knowledge, that have an interest in the industry, that could help you grow. And then you find the right model for the country. I think there's a whole big market to be addressed here.
Yeah, and what are you the most excited about within the APAC region in terms of its growth trajectory?
Well, for me, I think it's the population which is generally underserved, if you ask me. When I talk about underserved, so if we go by like industry reports, HFA has one that they come out with all the time. Gym penetration rates as a percentage of population,
Of course,
even in cities like Singapore and Hong Kong, loads of gyms, etc. And we're talking about penetration rate of 7-8%, not even 10. And that's just gyms alone. And you talk about physical activity in general. I don't think physical activity rates are high at all in any of these Asian countries. I think best guesstimates are putting at general physical activity rates at below 25%, and that's low in general. Which means if you look,
has it gotten worse since COVID or better? Because I feel like COVID's always been the metrics of some countries getting fatter, some countries getting actually more productive.
I think in general, it's gotten better, but I don't think we've got really hard numbers to go by. I think the awareness of the importance of physical activity has certainly gone up. Whether that awareness has translated into actual numbers going up, I think that's anybody's guess. It seems to be that there were more people out and about during COVID and immediately following. Those numbers, just by visual identification, seem to have dropped a little. But I don't know. I don't know for a fact. But the point also is when you've got small percentages of either gym-going populations or population doing physical activity, that really means that your potential market is huge over here.
It's huge.
And I mean, that's
it's like a 10x opportunity, isn't it? Essentially.
I mean, that's the part that excites me. And that's actually the business that RX Health is getting into, trying to find solutions to address physical inactivity for the general population. I mean, we as an industry have been talking about it for eons.
Of course.
We're
talking about the 80% that we've talked about it for so long.
That's right. But all that talk, and how many of us have actually succeeded in actually moving the needle? So that's what is most, getting me excited.
Do you think that's because of our subscription business model, though? We're getting deep here now, Sean, but like do you know what I mean? Like, if we were earning the right, I would think about like models like Starbucks, and if we're earning the right to from a customer service point of view every single time, rather than relying on a monthly fee, do you think that grows the pie? I know some models would absolutely completely capitulate, and so I can totally appreciate that. But like, just your thoughts on sometimes we. I don't know. It's our success in terms of showing what we can do, but also maybe it's the reason why we can't grow. Is my opinion. I don't know. Thoughts?
Many contributory factors. I think that the success of the subscription model, or maybe I'll phrase it a different way, the industry's adherence to the subscription model, or their predisposition to the subscription model might be one of this. we always come back. We've looked at and we've discussed ad nauseum about subscription, multi-dues versus pay as you go. Everybody comes back to the subscription because that gives
and I would.
you
I was launching a
predictability.
gym tomorrow. I'm going subscriptions any day.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? But if you're looking at it from a consumer point of view,
Yes.
which would you rather have? It's obviously the latter. And we're always going to be at different points of the spectrum with that. So it depends. Is it going to be the role of in a way government stepping in to help move that needle? Will they do it from a public health point of view? Would governments even bother? Would they care?
Yeah, and there are models, like we've been talking in negotiations with Japanese operator who's just doing these kind of like micro gyms in the middle of like high streets, and they kind of look like bus stations where you can kind of do a workout, pay as you go type model, and then that constantly changes to a wellness area, or very much in the world of virtual and screens, so they can constantly be changed. But I don't know. Let's see. I know there's a few options like that in China as well. I think these quirky ideas we got to see and get behind. Actually, it would be good to get your opinion on Japan, because I spent some time with some of the big operators in Japan, and they were actually telling me, which I haven't seen any industry stats on this, but they were saying that penetration before COVID was 3%. Now they reckon it's around about 4.5%. So they've actually seen a huge growth, but more from the fact of a third space being the biggest point. So the gyms are now, rather than being smaller in size, they're actually looking for bigger in size and more areas for people to work in, like large areas for the third space model. Is that what you're seeing? Is that just Japan alone?
I think some countries will see that. Japan does see that. There are also some reasons as to why that is the case with Japan.
Hit me.
Well, if you're talking about home fitness and all of that, doesn't work so well in Japan simply because living spaces, homes are just smaller in size. So it's just a practical reason. So if you offer a third space, which is comfortable, where they can get away for a while, they can do a bit of a workout, and it's viable, it's close to their home, not too far away, that might work. And that's my guess as to why we're seeing a bit of an uptick in that front. Not necessarily the same, across every single country or every single city, and that's why I said Asia is so very different.
No, it makes sense. And then we've done 20 minutes without even talking about technology, so I've got to go there. Okay. So how from a Wexer point of view, we see so much. Kind of exactly how you explained the Asian market, well, APAC/Asian market is so much success in different types of business models that we wouldn't, doesn't fit the traditional European or US in terms of commercialization, in terms of usage, very, very persona-led engagement factors, in terms of, celebrities are actually far more engaged in Asian countries than things when it comes to content. I guess, what are you, of course, I'm going to come from a content point of view, but what are you seeing in terms of how technology is shaping the APAC region?
I think in general, the Asians love technology. There's a very high mobile penetration rate. That's for one. So, anybody who has, very good mobile strategy or something that would cause people to be engaged via their phones or via their devices, and it could be via social media platforms. I think, you've got a good chance of succeeding. So the interesting part about Asia is, in some of the outlying areas in some countries, which are not even connected by traditional mobile networks, meaning fixed line networks, or, you actually have very high mobile penetration rates. That's where the mobile phone companies have succeeded, right? So they've actually had a very, very high success rate in connecting rural populations and populations in the outlying areas by mobile networks. That is an opportunity in itself. Now, whoever can thereafter, provide solutions to these people,
Yes.
Whether it's workouts,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's influencer-based workouts or home
Yeah.
type-based workouts or self-workouts, I think there is certainly an
Yeah.
opportunity there.
Well,
There are so many, sort of hard to get in rural places that it
yeah. Of
does not make any sense to build gyms or studios there.
course.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, by connection by platforms like Wexer and the
Yeah.
offerings that
Yeah.
you do with content will be fantastic for those regions.
Because that's what's always surprised me is that why hasn't there been like, and I know people have tried in the States and Europe, like, the celebrity-led gym classes, but I think if there was a market to ever do that, and then of course extend to rural areas where it doesn't make sense to have a gym. So, have a gym that's, I don't know. I've got Jane Fonda in my head at the moment, Sean. So let's say Jane Fonda of fitness in Asia creates gyms, and then that regional approach makes sense, right? Because you're still engaging with the base, and when they do travel to towns, they can go to those gyms. Am I missing? Am I making that too simplistic? Like, I just think that is something that they'll buy into, because they buy into that celebrity so much more in terms of their whole overall holistical lifestyle, not just their fitness routines.
They do, but the thing is, I don't think anybody has really looked at that as a serious opportunity. I think
Right.
what they're sort of focused in is, since COVID ended, everybody's like
Mm,
back to, let's focus on brick and mortar. Let's bring them back to the gyms that do this
sure.
and that.
Yes.
Sure, digital technology and all of that has not lost its place. I think people
No.
now see
No.
it as an integral offering, but in a brick
No.
and mortar setting. So I don't think
Of
anybody has
course.
had
Yeah.
the time or the bandwidth to actually sit down and
Mm,
think, well, do we have a strategy? Do we have Chris
yeah.
Hemsworth or
Yeah.
Jane Fonda for Asia? Should we
Yes.
be doing something for with for India, for China? Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so no one has really thought about it in a big way, but
Yeah.
I think that's certainly an opportunity, mate.
I feel like a new business is maybe creating between me and you. Let's not do it live on the podcast. But look, because if you like, if I reverse engineer a lot of our success for Wexer is when people have started to use their own talent as persona-based marketing assets, and then from that marketing assets, they use it as content, and then they have their own influencers actually, under the brand Club X, pushing that all the time, and that's where we see digital uptake, and we see the flow on to some clubs have got into a position where I think 22% of all members coming from the digital platform, because of course it's a natural nice feed in, right? I follow that person, maybe I've got them off Instagram or YouTube, they're on the Club X platform to get all the best content. I'll subscribe, then lead into a club membership. It's interesting that we haven't seen that model play out yet in such a good fan-based Asian market, but to be seen. So I'll leave that there. And then I guess what's your, in terms of wellness being wellness as an overall kind of segment, the merging of wellness coming together with fitness clubs, like, the more I see of these clubs, the more that's getting executed within it. Is that what you're seeing as well? Or is that a fad that everyone's kind of done it now? Where do you think that's wellness as an overall sales proposition to the market is within fitness in the industry?
I don't think it's a fad that will go away anytime soon.
Yeah.
But as you well know, when you talk about wellness, there's so many
Yes.
possible aspects of all of that. We're seeing
Yeah.
different iterations and different offerings coming in. But the one thing I think that will stay is the fact that people are placing a lot more value on mental wellness,
Yeah.
and they're prepared to therefore try a lot of other treatments and any other modalities within that
Mm.
wellness space to try the hand at it. It was really interesting. I mean, last night I serve on the board of a charity called Smile Asia that gives
Okay.
free cleft lip and cleft palate operations to
Ah,
communities all around Asia, especially for children with facial deformities. And
okay.
uh, we had a charity dinner in Singapore last night, and the Queen
Right.
Mother of Bhutan was
Okay.
our chief guest. And
Yeah.
Bhutan, I don't know if you caught this in the news, Bhutan is building a new mindfulness city.
I did see that.
And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, so they announced that earlier this year, and it's going to be in a huge area in the south of Bhutan. And
Nice.
I was having a bit of a chat with the Queen Mother, and she was telling me um, about how they are really excited about this because wellness is very much entrenched in the DNA of the Bhutanese people.
Of
They've got
course.
the place there, but what they're doing
Mm.
is they're working with consultants from the US, and the city planner for this space is
Mm.
actually a Singaporean firm that comes together.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they're gonna borrow from Bhutan some of their concepts and some of the Buddhist mindfulness concepts and put it all in this city of mindfulness. It's still a few years away, but
Wow.
it's things like that when you've got
And
whole
that's the goal
countries
of,
coming in.
yeah, and the goal of becoming a tourist spot for that, like literally being the place that you want to go for wellness. Is that the capital of wellness type thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
so it's meant for wellness tourism, but it's also,
Yes. Yes.
it's also for the population. It is a
Right.
rural
Okay.
area that it's going to be built at. So I think the
Right.
King of Bhutan, wants the area to see a bit of generation in terms of economic life, um, but also I think they see wellness and mindfulness as something which Bhutan can maybe play a role in showing the rest
Mm.
of the world how they
Yes.
do it. How their people are constantly ranked as the happiest on earth.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
so what they're doing right and what do the rest of us have to learn.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea, and so for me, just pivoting towards you, my friend, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast. So like, because you do so much, like every time I'm talking to you, you're on some other board, or you're doing. How do you manage your time? Like, give three or one bit of advice that you would for entrepreneurs to, you're involved in so much, and you would argue, there's so many people going, you got to focus, you got to focus. You do so much and still able to execute so well. What's your trick?
I joke with my wife sometimes, and I say, I say that, maybe it's me having ADHD in terms of
Okay.
business.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in all seriousness, I think about being very disciplined with my time,
Right.
and having very good teams.
Yes.
I can't do as much as what I do
Right.
by myself,
Of
so
course.
I have to learn how to delegate and to have teams which know how to pick the ball up.
Right.
And I tell them, and I prepare them well for it. I tell them, look, you guys know how busy I am, so
Yes.
you have to have the ability to continue to run, even though I'm not,
Yeah.
pushing you from behind. So
Yeah.
that's my number one criteria. When I go about looking about, to build
And,
the
and
teams.
and what do you look for when you're hiring? Because that's one of the questions I get a lot in terms of especially the first few employees. And me and you both know with startups, those are the critical. Outside of the original founders or investors, they're the real critical people to see how well the product's going to go. Like, is there any tips you can give in terms of recruiting those type of people?
Well, for me, the core team, like for example, when I built the core team at RX Health,
Yeah.
number one, they've got to have serious buy-in into the vision and the
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
They've got to believe that at the heart of it. And the second thing that I look for is I'm looking for somebody who is self-driven and who has more or less some of the entrepreneurial properties
Mm.
or traits that I myself have, because
Yes.
you need that person to run when you're not
Yeah.
there, to
Yeah.
push when you're not there
Yeah.
to push. So I I was not looking for traditional hires. So people
Mm.
who have worked in, for example, a big box environment for years and years and just been salaried employees, I would not hire them. They might be very, very good at what they do, but they will
Sure.
not be the fit for the business the way I run it.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different.
Understand.
Um, the other thing is, uh, I need them to have the patience to listen to me, because
Mm.
sometimes I get very creative when I think, and I get even more creative when I drink and think. So I always, I like a glass of wine, and they've learned that meetings with me are very often held with me with a glass of wine in hand, or a can of beer, and
Yes.
that's when the ideas flow, and they've learned
Yes.
not to stop me. and to pen it all down, and the next day we'll just go through the list and take off the ridiculous ideas, but inevitably some of those ideas stick. But yeah,
totally.
It's that, I think it's that honesty in having an open channel of communication with the key team as well. I'm still building the key team for some of the businesses that I'm starting out on, but I think those are some of the very important things I look out for when I build a core team.
Yeah, I appreciate the advice, and look, thank you for everything you do for this industry as well, Sean. Like, we've got many very, very passionate. I think that's the great thing about the fitness industry, how much passionate people we have that are truly trying to make change. But for me, when I think about those type of individuals in terms of passion for our industry and passion for the betterment of our industry, I always think of you. So, look, truly from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you do, Sean.
No, thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, and look, thank you for being on the podcast. The insights have been immense, and look, I wish you all the luck. And how do people reach out to you, Sean? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn, so look for me, Sean Tan, on LinkedIn. And if they don't know how to reach me, they can reach you to reach me.
I will always connect you. Look, well, thank you so much. Oh, come on, that's not true. So thank you very much for joining. Again, Insights. I feel like we need to do a version 2, so that will probably come in time. But again, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for joining.
Most welcome, mate.
Cheers. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.